Late evening had settled over the small rural town, and winter had arrived with more force than anyone expected. The wind pushed against the wooden walls of Samuel's small farmhouse, making it groan and creak. Outside, the world was white and empty. Snow fell so heavily that the ground, the trees, even the fences seemed to disappear under it. It was the kind of cold that hurt the skin and made breathing difficult. Inside the house, however, Samuel sat near the fireplace, warming his hands and hoping the storm would pass by morning. Samuel lived alone. His wife had passed away many years earlier, and he had no children. Most of his days were spent taking care of his animals, fixing small things around the farm, and doing his best to keep the land alive. Winters were always tough, but this one felt harsher. The wind howled like a warning, and the snow piled higher than he had ever seen. He had just placed another piece of wood into the fire when he heard a sound. At first, he thought the wind had knocked something over. But then he heard it again, 3 sharp knocks on the door. He froze. It was nearly midnight. No one ever came to his home at such an hour. The storm was dangerous. Even the bravest farmer would not be outside without a strong reason. He waited, listening. Another knock came, softer this time, almost weak. His heart began to beat faster. He wondered if maybe someone had lost their way, or if an animal had pushed against the door. But then he heard a voice, thin, trembling, almost like a whisper carried by the cold wind. "Please, I'm freezing. Let me in, I beg." The voice did not sound angry or threatening. It sounded tired, scared, and desperate. Samuel stood up slowly and walked toward the door. He hesitated for a moment. His mind reminded him that he lived near the edge of Apache lands. Over the years, there had been misunderstandings and small conflicts between some settlers and some members of the tribe. Even though Samuel himself never had trouble with anyone, he knew that trust did not always come easily in such places. Still, the voice outside did not sound dangerous. It sounded like someone who might not survive the night if left outside. Samuel took a deep breath, unlocked the door, and opened it just enough to look out. A wave of cold hit him so strongly that his eyes filled with tears. The wind pushed snow into the house, and Samuel had to shield his face. Through the blur of white, he saw her, a small, elderly Apache woman standing only a few feet away. She wore thin clothing, not enough for such a harsh winter night. Her hands were shaking. Her lips were turning pale, and she could barely stand. Snow covered her hair and shoulders. She looked like she had been wandering in the storm for hours. Her eyes met his dark, tired eyes full of fear and exhaustion. I'm freezing," she whispered again. "Let me in, please." Samuel hesitated only a moment. Whatever worries he had were pushed aside by the simple, obvious truth in front of him. She needed help. Without another word, he stepped aside and opened the door fully. "Come in," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "Quickly, before you freeze." The woman tried to move, but her body was stiff from the cold. Samuel reached out and held her arm to help her step inside. She almost fell as she crossed the doorway, and he had to support her. Once inside, he closed the door tightly, shutting out the wind. The woman stood there shivering, her arms wrapped around herself. Her fingers were blue from the cold. Samuel guided her to the chair near the fireplace. "Sit, warm yourself," he said. She nodded weakly, unable to speak for a moment. Samuel grabbed a thick blanket from his cabinet and wrapped it around her shoulders. She trembled under the warm fabric, but little by little, her breathing began to slow. Her eyes closed briefly as if she was fighting to stay conscious. Samuel took a kettle of warm water from the stove and poured her a cup. He handed it to her carefully. Her hands shook so much that he had to help her hold the cup. She took small sips, and the warmth seemed to bring a bit of color back to her face. "Thank you," she whispered, barely loud enough to hear. Samuel nodded. "You're safe now." "What were you doing out there? This storm is too dangerous." She took a moment before answering. Her voice was thin, but it carried a quiet strength. "I was trying to reach my niece's home. It is miles from here. I thought I could arrive before the heavy snow, but the storm came too fast. My legs, they grew weak, I lost my way. Samuel felt a heavy feeling in his chest. You're lucky you found this place. Another hour out there, and... He did not finish the sentence. She understood anyway. I prayed someone would hear me, she said softly. I prayed for warmth. Samuel looked at her closely. She was older than he first thought, her face lined by many years of hardship. Even though her clothes were simple and worn, there was something dignified about her. She seemed like someone who had seen both suffering and beauty in her long life. I'm Samuel, he said. You can stay here until you're strong enough to travel again. The woman nodded slowly. My name is Taya, she whispered. You have saved me tonight. Samuel sat on the chair across from her. The fire crackled softly. For a moment, neither spoke. The storm outside continued to rage, making the windows rattle, but inside, the small house felt warm and safe. Taya looked around the room with gentle, grateful eyes. It was a simple, home wooden walls, an old cabinet, a few tools hanging near the door, and a table with a lantern. She seemed to study everything carefully, as if trying to understand the man who lived there. You live alone? She asked. Samuel nodded. Yes, it's just me these days. She gave a slow, thoughtful nod. Sometimes solitude makes the heart heavy, she said quietly. But it can also make kindness stronger. Samuel was surprised by her words. There was something peaceful about the way she spoke, as though every sentence held a meaning deeper than the words themselves. He stood up, grabbed a pot of warm stew he had cooked earlier, and poured some into a bowl. You should eat, he said. Taya accepted the bowl with both hands. She ate slowly, carefully, as though each bite warmed her from the inside. Samuel watched her with concern, hoping she would recover fully. After eating, she looked at him again. You did not have to open your door. Many would not have. Samuel shrugged lightly. I couldn't leave you out there. Taya shook her head gently. Not anyone. Kindness is not as common as people believe. Her words made Samuel think. He remembered times when neighbors had been too busy to help one another. Times when people looked away from those who were struggling. Perhaps she was right. Taya leaned back in the chair, the blanket wrapped tightly around her. She stared into the fire, watching the flames dance. When I knocked, she said softly, I did not know if I would find a friend or someone who feared me. But you opened the door. Samuel felt a strange mix of sadness and warmth. Fear doesn't help anyone survive the cold, he replied. She smiled faintly. It was a tired but sincere smile. Your heart will be rewarded, she said in a tone that surprised Samuel. Kindness always returns to the giver, even if not in the way expected. Samuel didn't know what to say to that. He wasn't looking for any reward. He simply did what he felt was right. The fire continued to warm the room. Taya's shivering slowly stopped. Her face looked more relaxed now, less pale. The storm outside kept roaring, but inside, time seemed to slow down. It felt like two very different worlds existed on either side of the walls. Soon, Taya's eyes grew heavy. Her body, exhausted from the cold and fear, could no longer stay awake. Samuel saw her struggling to keep her eyes open. You should rest, he said gently. You can sleep near the fire. It's warm here. She nodded, too tired to speak. Samuel placed another blanket over her legs to make sure she stayed warm. Within a few minutes, she fell into a deep sleep, her breathing steady and calm. Samuel watched her for a moment. He felt a strange sense of responsibility, almost like she was a guest, sent to him for a reason he didn't yet understand. He added more wood to the fire and then quietly sat back in his chair. Outside, the storm kept raging. Snow covered the entire land, and the wind blew with a force that shook the trees. But inside the farmhouse, two people strangers only an hour ago were now sharing warmth and safety. As Samuel closed his eyes to rest, he did not know that this simple act of kindness would change the direction of his life in ways he could never imagine. Taya's arrival on that freezing night was not just an accident of weather. It was the beginning of a story that would connect their lives forever. Morning arrived quietly, as if the storm had used up all its strength in the night. When Samuel woke up, the first thing he heard was the soft crackling of the fire. The house was warm, and the harsh sound of the wind was gone. He rubbed his eyes, stretched his arms, and slowly stood up. For a moment, he wondered if everything that happened last night was real, or just a dream. But when he looked toward the chair near the fire, he saw Taya still sleeping under the blankets. She looked peaceful, much stronger than she had the night before. Her breathing was steady, her hands no longer shaking. The color in her face had returned. Seeing her like this filled Samuel with relief. He walked quietly to the kitchen corner, not wanting to wake her, and began boiling water for tea. The smell of warm steam filled the air. A few minutes later, Taya opened her eyes. She blinked slowly, adjusting to the morning light. For a moment she looked confused, as if trying to remember where she was. Then she saw Samuel and the fire, and her expression softened. "You're awake," Samuel said gently. "How are you feeling?" "Better than I expected," she replied, her voice still soft but stronger than before. "Your fire saved me." Samuel poured her a cup of warm tea and handed it to her. She accepted it with both hands, taking small sips, letting the warmth spread through her body. Outside the window, thick snow covered everything. Trees bent under the weight, and the entire yard looked like a soft white blanket. The sunlight made the snow sparkle like tiny crystals. "You should stay a little longer," Samuel said. "The storm left a lot of snow. It's not safe to travel yet." Taya nodded. "I know. I cannot walk far in this. I thank you again. You have given me shelter and warmth." Samuel sat down across from her. He was curious about her, about where she was going and where she had come from. But he didn't want to push her. He waited until she spoke again on her own. "My journey has been long," she said slowly. "I was going to my niece's home. She lives many miles from here. I left early in the morning yesterday, hoping to reach her place by sunset. But the weather turned against me. My legs became weak. I thought I would not survive the night." Samuel looked at her with quiet sympathy. "You're safe now. You can rest here until the roads are clear." Taya took another sip of tea, warming her fingers on the cup. There was a peaceful wisdom in her eyes, as if she had lived through many winters, many storms, and many difficult days. After a few minutes of silence, Taya reached into the small cloth bundle she carried. She opened it with careful, gentle movements. Inside were a few handmade items, small pieces of wood carved with delicate patterns, strings of colorful beads, and a tiny pouch that seemed to hold herbs. She picked up a small charm, a wooden piece shaped like a circle with a bead hanging from the center. It looked simple, but there was something beautiful about it. She held it in her palm, studying it for a long moment, then looked at Samuel. "I want to give this to you," she said. Samuel blinked, surprised. "You don't have to give me anything. I helped because it was the right thing to do." "I know," she replied gently. "That is why you must have it." She placed the charm in his hand. It felt light, but somehow meaningful, as if it carried a story with it. Samuel examined it carefully. "Did you make this?" "Yes," she said with a small smile. "I make many things with my hands. It is how I live. This charm is for safety and good fortune. It carries a wish that the one who keeps it will always find help when needed." Samuel felt a warm sense of gratitude. "Thank you," he said, touched by her kindness. But Taya shook her head lightly. "This is only a small part of your reward," she whispered. "You showed mercy. In this world, mercy is not forgotten. Kindness returns in the way most needed. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but when the time is right." Her words made Samuel feel thoughtful. He didn't believe in magic or predictions, but he did believe in the goodness of people. Still, something about her tone made him feel that she wasn't simply expressing hope, she was certain. "Reward?" he repeated softly, almost confused. Taya nodded. "Yes, every good act plants a seed somewhere. One day, that seed gives fruit." Samuel didn't know how to respond. He wasn't expecting anything in return, and he didn't want her to feel pressured to repay him. But Taya's eyes held a seriousness that made him realize she wasn't just talking about a small gift. She was speaking about something deeper, something he couldn't yet understand. The rest of the morning passed quietly. Samuel cooked breakfast, and they shared a simple meal. Taya ate slowly, as if savoring every bite. Afterward, she sat near the fire again, gently rubbing warmth into her hands. "You have lived here many years?" she asked. "Yes, most of my life," Samuel answered. "My parents built this house. After they were gone, I stayed. It's peaceful here." Taya studied him for a moment. Peace can be a heavy gift when held alone. Samuel looked at her, thinking about her words. She spoke simply, yet her sentences felt heavy with meaning. "What about you?" he asked. "Where's your family?" Taya looked down at her hands. "My husband passed many years ago. My children grew up and moved away. I have nieces and nephews. Some help me, some forget me. Life is like that. But I hold no sadness. Each person walks their own path." Samuel nodded slowly. He understood the feeling of losing people, of life becoming quieter than expected. Perhaps that was why he didn't hesitate to open his door last night. After some time, Taya stood up and walked to the window. She pushed the blanket aside, peering at the deep snow outside. "It will take days for the path to clear," she said softly. "You're welcome to stay," Samuel said again. She smiled. "You have already given more than many would, but I will not trouble you long." "It's not trouble," Samuel replied, almost in a whisper. "This house could use some company." Taya turned toward him, her expression gentle, understanding what he meant without needing more words. She walked back to the fire and sat down again. "Sometimes," she said, "people meet for reasons they do not see at first. Last night, I thought I was lost. But perhaps I was meant to knock at your door." Samuel looked at her strangely. "Do you really believe that?" "Yes," she said simply. "I have felt it since I woke up. Life brings people together at the right time." Her certainty made Samuel feel a strange comfort. He didn't know much about her, yet he felt like he could trust her words. Later in the afternoon, the sunlight grew brighter, reflecting off the snow. Taya spent time telling Samuel small stories from her life, how she learned to make charms, how her grandmother taught her to read signs of weather, how simple kindness had saved her many times in her youth. Her stories were gentle, filled with small lessons hidden inside. Samuel listened carefully, enjoying the warmth of her voice. She spoke slowly, choosing her words like someone who had seen much and understood even more. As evening approached, Taya prepared to rest again. Samuel added more wood to the fire. Before lying down, Taya looked at him with calm, thoughtful eyes. "Remember what I said," she murmured. "Kindness returns in unexpected ways. You have planted something today." Samuel nodded, still not sure what she meant but feeling the weight of her words. Taya lay down near the fire, wrapped in warm blankets. Within minutes, she fell into a peaceful sleep. Samuel watched her for a few seconds, then looked down at the charm she had given him. He held it softly in his hand, feeling the smooth wood against his fingers. He didn't know what the future held. He didn't know that her promise would soon become real in ways he had never imagined. But for now, he simply placed the charm safely on the table beside him, letting the fire warm the room as night slowly returned. Winter slowly loosened its grip on the land. But the cold did not leave easily. For many days after Taya left, Samuel's farm remained buried under snow. The roof held long icicles. The ground was frozen, and the air carried a chill that seemed to cling to everything it touched. Samuel tried his best to keep his animals healthy, but even they sensed the long, difficult season. Taya had stayed for 2 nights until the sun melted just enough snow for her to continue her journey. Before leaving, she thanked Samuel again, placed her hand gently on his shoulder, and repeated the same strange but peaceful words. Kindness returns in the way most needed. After that, she walked away slowly, her steps steady but full of purpose, her form disappearing into the white fields until she became part of the morning light. In the weeks that followed, Samuel found himself thinking about her often. Her voice, her calm presence, and the charm she had left behind, all of it stayed with him. He hung the charm near his window where the morning light touched it every day. It became a symbol of something he couldn't yet explain, something that felt warm even in the coldest hours. But life on the farm grew difficult as winter turned into early spring. The long freeze had damaged many things. The pipes needed repair, the fence surrounding the backfield had collapsed under the heavy snow, and several tools had rusted from the dampness. Worse than all of that was the state of Samuel's crops. They had frozen before he could harvest them, leaving him with almost nothing to sell. He counted his savings one night at the small kitchen table. The coins and bills looked thin compared to the pile of bills he had to pay for seeds, repairs, and food for his animals. His heart felt heavy. He had survived hard winters before, but this one had taken more than usual from him. Still, he kept working. Every morning, he woke up early, fed the animals, repaired small things on the property, and tried to prepare the field for the next season. His hands grew cracked and tired. His back ached from bending over the land, but he didn't complain. Working was the only thing he had ever known. One cold afternoon, while fixing the broken fence, he noticed two men approaching from the road. They wore long coats, carried notebooks, and walked with a certain confidence that made Samuel uneasy. As they reached the gate, they called out to him, "Are you Samuel Hayes?" "Yes," Samuel answered, wiping his hands on his coat. "Can I help you with something?" The taller man stepped forward. "We're from the West Ridge Land Company. We're making routine visits to properties in this area." Samuel felt a small knot form in his stomach. He had heard of this company before. They were known for buying land cheaply and selling it for high profit later. Many farmers had complained that the company took advantage of people who were struggling. "I'm busy today," Samuel said politely but firmly. "What do you need?" The second man opened a folder and glanced at some papers. "Your land has fallen below certain productivity levels. Our company wants to offer you a fair solution. If you sell us your property now, we can take responsibility for its upkeep and development." Samuel's expression tightened. "I'm not selling my land." The first man smiled in a way that did not feel friendly. "You might want to reconsider. Your farm shows signs of neglect. Under certain laws, land that is not properly maintained can be reviewed for repossession." Samuel's heart beat faster. "This land has been my family's property for generations," he said slowly. "I take care of it. This winter was hard, but that doesn't mean I'm giving it up." The man shrugged. "We're only trying to help you before things get worse." Samuel watched them walk away with a heavy feeling. As soon as they were out of sight, he leaned on the fence and let out a long breath. He didn't have the money to fight a legal battle. He didn't have support or family nearby. The idea of losing his farm filled him with worry. Days passed, and the men returned again and again. Each time they came with more pressure, more warnings, more papers that Samuel could barely understand. They told him the land needed repairs he could not afford, that his property taxes might increase, that he should sell before he faced larger problems. Their words felt like cold hands squeezing his hope. One evening, after another stressful visit, Samuel sat inside the house, staring at the charm Taya had given him. It hung still, barely moving. The wooden circle and tiny bead caught the glow of the fire, reflecting a soft shine. Samuel held it gently in his hand, as if holding onto a small piece of comfort. "Most needed," he whispered, remembering her words. "Not expected." He didn't know what she meant. He didn't know how kindness could help him keep his land. But thinking about her gave him a sense of peace he desperately needed. The next morning, things became worse. One of his cows became ill. Samuel tried everything he knew: warm blankets, clean water, gentle care, but the animal refused to eat. Losing even one cow would be a heavy financial blow. His heart felt squeezed with stress and sadness. All day he worked harder, hoping the situation would improve. But the land felt uncooperative, as though winter had left scars that could not heal easily. That night, Samuel sat alone beside the fire, his mind filled with worry. He felt tired not from the work, but from the constant fear of losing everything. The farm wasn't just land to him. It held memories of his parents, of his childhood, of every dream he ever had. The walls carried laughter and stories. The soil held the footprints of the people he had loved. Losing it would mean losing a part of himself. He leaned back in his chair, staring at the charm again. Its smooth wood felt warm in his palm. He wondered if Taya had known something he didn't. She had spoken so confidently about a reward, about kindness returning. But how could a small charm or a few kind words protect him from losing his home? He sighed deeply, closed his eyes, and listened to the quiet crackle of the fire. Somewhere inside him, he felt a tiny spark of hope, small, but still alive. The next day brought another surprise. While Samuel was sweeping snow from the front steps, a letter arrived. The envelope looked official. He opened it with shaking hands. It was a notice saying that his land would be reviewed by the county for lack of proper maintenance. He had 30 days to prove he could manage the property or face possible action. Samuel sat on the steps, holding the letter, feeling a wave of helplessness wash over him. He had no idea how he would fix everything in time. His thoughts returned again to Taya. He remembered her calm eyes, her soft smile, the gentle way she spoke. He remembered how she had promised that kindness would come back to him, but he felt so alone now, facing problems too big for him. That night, as he sat by the fire again, he closed his eyes and whispered softly, "Taya, I don't know what you meant, but I hope your words find me soon." He didn't realize that help was already on its way. He didn't know that someone had heard about the visit from the land company. He didn't know that a story about a kind farmer who had helped an old woman was being repeated somewhere among people he had never met. He didn't know that his reward, the one Taya spoke of, was closer than he imagined. Later that night, he felt a strange sense of calm. The fire glowed softly. The charm hung quietly, and the air around him felt warmer than usual, as if someone unseen was offering comfort. He closed his eyes, unaware that this calm moment was the beginning of a change that would protect everything he loved. The days that followed were filled with a strange mix of calm and hope. After everything he had faced, he finally felt like life was giving him a second chance. The challenges had not disappeared, but now he had a clearer mind and a stronger heart to deal with them. Every morning, he woke up with a renewed sense of purpose, reminding himself that even small steps could lead to big changes if he stayed patient and focused. He began paying attention to the small details of life that he had ignored earlier. The sound of birds in the early hours, the warm sunlight entering through the window, the kindness of people around him, all these things became signs that life still had beauty to offer. He realized that sometimes, moving forward did not require big achievements. It only required the courage to show up every day and keep trying. As time passed, he also noticed that the people around him had started seeing a difference in him. His friends said he smiled more often now. His family felt that he listened more calmly and spoke more gently. He had grown from someone who carried confusion and fear to someone who slowly learned to trust life again. He was proud of this change because it came from deep within him, not from outside pressure. One day, while sitting alone and thinking about his life, he remembered all the moments when he felt like giving up. He remembered the nights he spent awake, the days he spent worrying, the times he believed things would never improve. Yet, here he was, standing stronger than before. This realization filled him with gratitude. He understood that struggles do not break a person, they shape them into someone wiser. He also began focusing on self-improvement. He worked on his communication skills, his career goals, and his personal habits. Instead of rushing toward quick results, he gave himself time to learn. Whenever he made a mistake, he tried not to blame himself. Instead, he treated every mistake as a lesson. This mindset helped him grow steadily, without losing motivation. Slowly, new opportunities started opening up for him. People appreciated his efforts and trusted him more. He was invited to join new projects, and he accepted them with confidence. He realized that while life might not always go according to plan, it still had a way of rewarding those who kept moving forward. His hard work was finally being noticed. But the biggest change happened inside his heart. He learned to forgive himself for the past. He stopped blaming himself for things that were out of his control. He stopped thinking that he wasn't enough. He started treating himself with kindness, understanding, and respect. This inner healing brought him peace that he had never felt before. One evening, he went for a walk alone. The weather was calm, and the sky was filled with soft colors of the setting sun. As he walked, he thought about how far he had come. He knew that the journey wasn't over. There would still be challenges ahead, but he also knew something much more important. He had the strength to face them. He was no longer afraid of the unknown. While walking, he saw a group of children playing nearby, their laughter echoing through the street. He watched them for a moment and smiled. Their happiness reminded him that life could be simple and joyful if one allowed it to be. That moment made him realize how important it was to appreciate the present instead of constantly worrying about the future. He continued walking, and for the first time in a long while, he felt light, almost as if a heavy weight had been lifted from his shoulders. It was a quiet feeling, a mix of peace, hope, and determination. He knew that the person he was becoming was much stronger than the person he once was. In the following days, he kept building the life he wanted. Step by step, he worked towards stability, success, and inner peace. He learned to balance his emotions, manage his time better, and set clear goals for himself. Every month, he noticed that he was improving in small but meaningful ways. His relationships improved too. He became more understanding, patient, and supportive. People valued his presence because he carried a calm energy that made others feel comfortable. He no longer felt the need to prove himself to anyone. Instead, he focused on being the best version of himself. Whenever he faced a difficulty, he reminded himself of his journey. He had survived so much, learned so much, and grown so much. A temporary problem was not enough to break him anymore. He had learned to stay steady, even in tough moments. Over time, his life took a positive turn. He became more confident in his decisions, more hopeful about his future, and more grateful for every blessing, big or small. Even the challenges that once scared him now looked like opportunities to grow. This mindset changed everything for him. He found new dreams to chase. Instead of thinking that his past had limited him, he now believed that his experiences had prepared him for something better. He felt ready to build his future with courage and purpose. One quiet night, he sat alone and looked back on his entire journey, from the struggles that once felt too heavy to the victories he was now proud of. He felt a deep sense of appreciation for how far he had come. Life had tested him, but he had not given up. He had rebuilt himself piece by piece, with patience and hope. He took a deep breath and closed his eyes. In that moment, he made a silent promise to himself. No matter what life brought in the future, he would keep moving forward with positivity. He would treat every day as a new chance to grow, to learn, and to live with purpose. This promise gave him strength. It reminded him that his journey was not just about reaching a destination. It was about becoming someone he could be proud of. He felt ready for the future, not because it would be easy, but because he believed in his ability to handle whatever came his way. With that thought, he opened his eyes and smiled. His heart felt calm, his mind felt clear, and his spirit felt stronger than ever. He knew that he had transformed from someone who once questioned his worth into someone who understood his value deeply. His story was not about perfection. It was about growth, resilience, and hope. It was about falling, standing up again, and becoming wiser each time. It was about discovering that even the toughest days could lead to beautiful tomorrows. And as he continued moving forward, he carried his lessons, his strength, and his hope with him. He embraced life with an open heart, ready for new beginnings. His journey was a reminder that no matter how difficult things may seem, there is always a path forward for those who choose to keep going with faith and determination.